Howdy, RV Renovation Nation. Welcome to the New Look RV Renovation Podcast,
where we want to empower and entertain RV renovators with relevant information, ideas, and stories that'll help you give that RV a new look.
We're your hosts. I'm April.
And I'm Derek. And if you're enjoying listening to this podcast, please subscribe.
On this episode, we sit down and chat with Karlee Marsh of Marsh and Sea.
Karlee and her husband Weston are some of the most influential renovators on the internet.
Their work is beautiful and so inspirational.
We really enjoyed this opportunity getting to talk with Karlee, and we're excited to share it with you.
All right. Well, Karlee, thanks so much for your time. We know you guys are really busy building your business and, of course, raising your kids. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
You've definitely been a big inspiration to a lot of people who kind of, work in this genre or are interested in this genre, including ourselves. It'd be kind of fun just to bounce back maybe to that first renovation. We know from kind of reading a little bit, about you that it was a renovation you guys made for you and your family.
We downsized from 2,300 square foot to, I'm guessing it was about 300 or less. It was a small travel trailer. We were getting ready to make a cross-country move, and I stumbled upon RV Renovation on Instagram. Some of our friends were redoing a van. They were doing a van build, and I was so jealous, like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. This is so cool. But I could never do that because I have two little kids, Just thought, I have kids, no shot. And then when I started looking on Instagram and found all these families that were living in renovated RVs, and it was kind of, I feel like just starting at the time, there were not a lot of people out there. I think the only two people doing it for a business that I knew of were RV Fixer Upper, Trina, and then the Flipping Nomad, Courtney. And so it was still kind of a new thing, but then we got sucked into this black hole of RV renovation, and we were both for days just scrolling, looking at all of these renovated RVs, and thought, okay, we can do this. This is amazing. So we started the search for our first RV that we were going to renovate. No intention of it being a business. My husband, Weston, he was a home builder at the time, so he had a lot of construction experience, and he had a decent amount of RV knowledge. That had been a part of his, childhood and growing up. They had campers, and so had we. So we knew, a decent amount about it. And then YouTube was an incredible teacher. Yeah, we sold our house, downsized, then started renovating this RV, which was a travel trailer with an actual bunk room in the back. It was 36 foot long. It was a pretty big travel trailer. So started that, renovated it in about 6 weeks, working part-time on it because Weston was still building houses. Renovated that, ended up moving. We lived in it for about 4 months. We enjoyed the tiny experience, but we were also like, okay, if we ever do this again, here's all the things that we really want, that helped us kind of figure out our priorities for tiny living.
What were some of those things?
Some of those were, we really thought we needed a huge bunk room for the kids, and they were 2 and 3 at the time. So that was one of our non-negotiables when we were looking, was to have this bunk room. And we found that just like in a house, they are wherever we are.
That's so
they just slept in their big giant bunk room, and we had no counter space in our kitchen. Because most of those layouts with the bigger bunk rooms in the rear come with, you sacrifice your living space a lot of times. So we didn't have a whole lot of counter space. That was another thing that we thought, okay, we can't do that again. And then in the master bedroom, we had no closet. We just had those 2 little cabinets on either side. And I took my closet. We had a walk-in closet where you could walk in on both sides. He had a walk-in side, and then I had a walk-in side. So I took that and made a capsule wardrobe. And I'm just not a capsule wardrobe kind of girl. I really enjoy shopping and clothes too much. So we said a closet in the master bedroom was a must. And we did some research on other bunk houses and found the mid bunk, which was a wonderful compromise because now our kids still have their own space, in which they, mostly just sleep in. And then there's clothing storage for them in there. All their toys are in there, but we still have a kitchen island, extra counter space back here. I have a pull-out sofa and 2 chairs right in front of me. So a lot more living space with that layout for us. Yeah. So we ended up selling that first travel trailer while we were out west, and we had no idea what to list it for. I was like, let's just try for this. And we sold it in 24 hours. Like, it was gone. And no one batted an eye at the price. We made a profit, and we thought, like, man, I wonder if we could do this again. So fast forward, we ended up back in South Carolina, and we partnered with my parents, and we're like, we're just going to try this. So that was our second RV renovation, was the 2008 Montana. That didn't sell for 4 months. We sat on it. We lowered the price a ton. We like continuously lowered it. It got shared all over Instagram. I mean, tons of shares. I was so thankful. People were constantly sharing it, saying, this is still for sale. I don't know how it's still for sale. People came to look at it. I was doing showings on this thing and video tours. Wasn't happening. Had a couple of people that like we sent banking information to that were going to buy it, and then they just ghosted us, totally flaked, never heard from them again. And we're like, okay, well, I guess we're not going to be RV renovators. This was a total flop. But from that, posting it, my Instagram started to grow. And then people started coming to us saying, well, can you renovate mine? Can you do this project on mine? And at that time, we were both working. And so we were just like, had this side hustle that was blowing up. And we ended up doing a smaller renovation for a friend. And then we did the 2004 Montana, which a local couple brought us this completely gutted RV. There was nothing, no cabinets, no bed. I mean, it was just walls, floors, and a refrigerator.
Had they started the renovation, then decided that it was over their head? Or
they started the renovation and felt like we don't have the time and we're in way over our heads. Yeah, they brought it to us and it was already gutted, which we don't usually gut them to that extent. I mean, it's very rare that we do that. We try to use some of the bones that are there. But anyways, it worked out. It was a beautiful renovation, one of my all-time favorites. Literally, like, we thought it was this failure. And actually, so we sold that 2008 Montana to a family in Texas, and then they were building a house and sold it again. And just literally a couple days ago, the girl who now lives in it, or the couple who now lives in it, reached out to me on Instagram, and she tagged me in a post and was like, she found one of my posts that said, I was so worried this was going to be a failure, from months and months ago. She commented and she's like, this was not a failure. We love this RV. We're like so happy living in it. Anyways, it's been so cool to watch our business grow, but also the fact that we get to be a part of all these different stories and families coming together. I have lots of stories, but
well, that's awesome to hear that too, especially since it wasn't like the original buyer. So then you're also getting a feeling of longevity. We're in Wisconsin, and so we deal with, extreme cold and extreme hot, and that wreaks havoc on anything that's left, outside, like an RV over the winter, with adhesives and paint and stuff like that. So that's got to be so cool to kind of hear that back from them.
Yeah.
How many renovations are you guys in at this point?
I think 16.
Oh, wow.
I think we're working on our 16th or 17th RV. Yeah, so we still learn new things every single time.
Well, we know from experience being a couple that works together that can come, of course, with its own challenges. How do you and Weston kind of like, I guess, obviously, like divvy up who does what and like work together? Are you more so like coming up with the design and he's executing?
Does he get input on that part too?
Very rarely. I'm so glad that he's not here, because we would just be like looking at each other. Like, it has definitely been like a joy and a struggle at the same time. And then in the difficult times, I'm thankful that it really has been probably one of the most difficult years of marriage, starting a business together, adding this new dynamic, working together, the new communication, then like having work conversations, home conversations, it all starts to blend together till like eventually there's no margin. Everything, it was all work talk. It was all, it overlapped too much. And I mean, like, Weston calls me the boss whenever I come up on his little job site. I walk in, he's like, "Oh, the boss is here." And I hate when he says it because I'm like, "Stop it, we're a team." But I am the project manager. Like, it's just how it is. I'm the one communicating with clients, and so I become the middleman of telling him, "Hey, this is what we're doing." And the worst part probably is whenever he misses something, or like he does something that was not what they asked for. And I have to be like, "I know you just spent your whole day on this project, but it's wrong and I need you to redo it." I'm like, "I'm so sorry."
Do you say that and get out of the room really quick?
Yeah. My dad works with Weston a lot, and he was in there for one of these conversations. There were beams going in, and she wanted them to be very light and natural, but we use special walnut stain a lot. And like, as you can see, my beams are dark, but like, I know it goes with the whole vibe. Weston's just like, "This looks like barnwood and it's rustic and it's going to be so cool." And so he gets these beams built, which are made from cedar, not cheap. Gets these beautiful beams, installs, and he starts staining it without testing and without bringing me a sample. And so he used our go-to stain. And I walk in the RV, he and my dad are working. I walk in and I look up at it and I'm like, "Oh my God." Like, my heart sinks because I know that I'm about to literally crush him. And I said, "I'm really sorry. I know you probably will hate me after this, but this is not right. It's supposed to be very light. We're not supposed to use a stain. We probably can just use an oil." And he had to take the whole beam down and start from scratch. So anyways, conversations like that with your husband are not fun. We have grown so much as a couple in learning to communicate and just figuring out the systems that work for us, the task management, project list, like the organization that works. Like, how does Weston work best? This is how I communicate best. This is how I work best with this type of list or whatever, but it may not be how he does. And so really just learning each other and figuring out, when I walk in and I see something wrong, like, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to be critical. Like, I just want to be honest and upfront and say, "Hey, we need to make sure this gets fixed. Don't be discouraged. Everything else is beautiful." I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, and another thing too that I thought was cool that you guys do, and actually we do as well, is that you use the Notes app on your phone to kind of like communicate like tasks and to-do lists and things.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea.
So much of our communication is in passing, and it was starting to become very common that things were getting missed. I would forget to tell him, or I told him one thing and 3 days later there is a change. If it was still during that first 2-week time of decision making with the client, like, there was so much in passing at the time. Up until maybe a month ago, I had no childcare, so I'm doing all this like with the kids, and so I'm super scatterbrained. He's working, and so the Notes app allowed us to, I could put I could jot something down, he could look at it. So it just, I know there's lots of things out there, Trello and whatnot, but the Notes app was easy and worked for us so that we could stay on the same page a little better. So.
And it's there. It's installed if you have an iOS.
So design obviously seems to be one of your major fortes. Where do you draw inspiration?
Honestly, a lot of it just comes from other designers just to start with. I didn't even really know that I enjoyed design or was good at it until after we did our first renovation. I was trying to copy a lot. Like, I would pull pictures and try to duplicate it. And then the next renovation, the second one, I said, I don't want to try to copy anybody. I just want to see what I could come up with. Like, I'm going to pull from, this is my taste. Like, these are things that I'm really saying that I like, but I didn't save any pictures like to my phone or to Pinterest or Instagram to say, "Hey, this is my inspiration photo for this RV." Now, inspiration usually comes from the client, that they save photos and show them to me, or they'll say, "We really like this element and this different element." Occasionally a client will say, "Here's the overall look that I really like. Now go for it." But usually there's more involvement in the details and stuff from my clients too, where we're communicating a ton, going back and forth, making decisions. So the inspiration really comes from my clients and their tastes and preferences. That's how I usually describe it to potential clients is, hey, everything is inspired by your taste. Now, whenever I get to just freely design something, like we're about to do an RV that'll be for sale. There's no client. And so I'm really excited to have the opportunity to see how I've grown, to just be able to dream up anything, basically. I mean, we have a budget, but to dream up anything. And so I save a lot of pictures on Instagram. I don't really use Pinterest as much anymore, and kind of go through and I look for, if I look through, the first 9 or 12 squares in my saved, just looking for, hey, what is some similarities in all of these photos that I'm really drawn towards? And then I just have spent a lot of time in this particular RV and kind of start visualizing, thinking about the best use of space. Sometimes I feel like designers can look at the whole space and kind of see the big vision, where sometimes I need one inspiration piece. It's a wallpaper or a rug or this certain piece of furniture. And I'm like, okay, this is it. This is my inspiration. And that, like, everything else flows from this one object. It could be a piece of art. So I kind of work backwards.
That's cool.
Well, and your designs always have, this beautiful aesthetic. And one of the things that, and I don't even know how many times you've done this or not. I feel like you've done it a million times, but like April showed me the pictures of these awesome fireplaces that you put in. And they're always, I've seen some great ones. They're great focal points. Like, how did that come about? Did you come across a camper or a fifth wheel that already had a fireplace and you just built around it? Or did you just say, hey, this would be a great addition?
So that 2008 Montana that we tried, that was our second one that we were selling. It had a fireplace in it. And then I just kind of said, I want to dream up something new for this area. And it ended up being so beautiful. And just the view, there's a photo of the view looking straight, just that angle. And I told Weston, I'm like, I really think Instagram's going to love this view. Like, I think that this picture is going to get lots of attention. And it did. It did. And then after we did that fireplace, the couple that was local that brought us to 2004 Montana, they kind of wanted to have an epic fireplace in theirs. And that was like, that's the one that has the butterfly prints above it. It's kind of like bluish green. So we designed those first 2 fireplaces, and I told Weston, like, I think fireplaces are going to be our thing. Like, I think this should just be like a Marsh and Sea signature. Like, we have to do great fireplaces. And then it just, people, like our clients all, and we want a fireplace. We really want a nice fireplace.
Yeah, you definitely succeeded at making that your trademark. Do you feel like because you are a tiny living family that influences some of your design?
Yes, there are some times where I will give feedback to my client that's asking for something, or they think they really, really need something. And I feel like our experience with tiny living, or RV living more specifically, and then just working with RVs and having the knowledge of them, I'm able to say, I really don't think you're going to use this as much as you think, or I don't think that's the best use of space. And 9 times out of 10, the client appreciates it and will change their mind and say, okay, you're totally right. Like, they just don't have the same perspective. And so being able to share that, I think has been helpful. Just since we have that background in RV knowledge.
So being on renovation number 16-ish, there's all kinds of ways you've grown in between here and there, but can you kind of sum that up a little bit?
It's just funny. Like, man, we had no idea what we were doing. The first one, I mean, Weston is just, he's talented. He's good at what he does. And he's very motivated to like learn new things himself. So, I mean, the time that he put into educating himself on RVs, the time he put into educating himself on different projects, and then watching YouTube and listening to podcasts or Instagram videos that were out at the time. So we've obviously, like I said earlier, We learn on every single RV. Like every RV, we learn something new.
And that's so good for people to hear because they look at, the work that, like you guys are doing. They're like, oh gosh, and that's like, that's an aspiration for them to get to that level. But, like anything, you never want to stop learning. And so hearing that, hearing you say that's wonderful.
People ask me, they say stuff about that, like the quality, or, oh my gosh, it's my dream to be able to design like you or renovate like you. And I just tell them, we started somewhere, like everybody does. We just like put stuff out there. We didn't really know 100% what we were doing. I was thankful for the knowledge that Weston had overall for construction and RVs. And another thing that I want to say and point out is with the RV renovations, it is not just design. It's not just coming in and doing this flip. There is so much to caring for the RV, knowing RV life and different pros and cons, knowing about water damage, knowing about seals in your roof and hot water heaters, AC units, the 12-volt electricity, and Weston would go on and on, probably telling you all kinds of technical things. So I've learned some. I do know some. I'm out there sometimes working with him. But anyway, yeah, it's not just design. It's important that I think that people know that.
Yeah, that it's not just what you paint. And
you have to know something. Like, you have to have knowledge on RVs, whether it's renovated or not. You have to have knowledge on campers and RVs.
Are you advising clients who are bringing their RV to you, like as far as maybe they're in the purchase process of looking something to get renovated, or maybe they already have something? Are you advising them along those lines to be on the lookout for, water damage, other, they're not bringing you something that's completely falling apart, hopefully?
Typically, we're working with people that don't have an RV yet. They're looking for one. They don't even own one. And so they're hiring us, and we kind of advise them on what to look for. We help them look, and we come from at the beginning, we're looking at layout. Like, I'm just thinking, okay, let's find the most functional floor plan so we can narrow our search, and then we'll look for quality of the RV. It's now a requirement that our clients have to have the RV inspected by an RV inspector, which we may get that licensing at some point, but right now we don't have it. And while we do know a lot, an RV inspector is going to go through even more thoroughly than what we do, and maybe even more than what we know. So anyways, we require that just so we know what we're getting into. And it is expensive. It's usually, a pretty penny to hire an RV inspector, and it's a long process. Totally worth it if it saves our client and us from starting out having this bad RV experience with, this isn't working and this didn't work. We don't do a lot of the technical repairs. We usually hire that out. They're not really the ones looking. The client, usually it's us looking. And at this point, with RVs being so popular, in such high demand, sometimes they end up being purchased sight unseen because we have an inspector come in and go over it. But we're looking nearly nationwide to find the perfect RV.
One of my questions on the business side of things would be, April kind of lends an ear to Instagram more than I do, but she said you've mentioned recently that you guys are considering maybe moving away from the client build model to kind of the buy and sell model. From a business standpoint, can you kind of contrast the differences there, and if you see any pros and cons of either of those approaches?
Really, the underlying motive was just kind of to alleviate some stress. We're trying to create more margin. We took on so much just this last year trying to build our business. We didn't say no a whole lot to anything because we just wanted to keep building, keep growing, keep expanding our portfolio. And so, eventually, I get really burnt out. I communicate all day long, with my clients, especially when they start overlapping. If I'm working with a remote client, coaching clients, it's so much communication. We just thought, where can we like remove some of this? Where can we cut back, but not take a loss financially? That is really more so why we thought, let's just go ahead and dive into, let's just buy them and work towards selling them. So there's not this third person communicating. Like now it's just me and Weston, just me saying, hey, this is my idea. This is my dream. Let's go for it. You know, now we really, really are working for ourselves. When you work for clients, you're really not, you're working for clients. And I mean, working for clients is wonderful because it's more guaranteed income for your business, where for resale, it's like, please God, let it sell. Like,
you were just talking about clearing up headspace, and like, we see that prior to doing RV renovation ourselves. We've run a photography business for a whole number of years, and jumping into this space, even though we're not doing nearly the volume or taking on client builds at this point, like we see the taxing side of having to communicate with people, having to talk to them. So it was really just trying to hear that from your perspective, if there was even like a numbers reason, or if it was really just clearing that headspace, which is even more valuable, I think, than the numbers.
This one that we're getting ready to sell in April, that's really our first attempt at we're doing this. We're saying no to clients and we're selling, and there's major risk because this business pays our bills. Like, this is how I buy my groceries. Like this is our number one income. We completely work for Marsh and Sea. And so honestly, like, maybe we will be taking clients in a few months, but right now I'm just telling everybody no, and we're going to try for doing it for resale, and hopefully, just freeing up that headspace margin of really allowing Weston and I to work for ourselves, and then continue, if we can maybe slow down the process a little bit. If we're doing it for resale, not working for a client, we're not working on a tight timeline, we can slow down that process a little bit, so it's not so much pressure and manual labor on Weston at all time. At all times, we don't get many breaks. Then we can focus more on some consulting, design, coaching, things like that. And I mean, we hope that we'll eventually work towards having margin to actually travel in the RV that we live in.
Well, it's hard, and especially like you said, when you're building a business, like you don't want to say no to opportunities. And when this is not a side hustle, it's your primary, source of income, you also don't want to say no for those reasons. And, we can definitely relate with that. And that's one of our goals, this year too, I think, is just to say no, not even necessarily to business things, but just things that, might be taking up time, that we want to reserve for our kids, or that, like you said, you want to do some personal travel, or, those sorts of things. So it's always, I think, trying to find that balance.
Absolutely.
It's hard when you're busy and, you guys have, you get the ball rolling, you don't want it to stop. So,
yeah. If someone out there was considering renovating their RV, but they were working on a limited budget, what do you think are kind of like the big things that they could do?
I feel like even for people that just have an RV that they're camping in, it's not their primary residence. There are so many things that you can do with limited budget, limited time, limited resources overall, to really just make it feel more like your space, to feel cozier. I usually tell people rugs, curtains, throw pillows. There's your like first easy upgrade, is put your own area rugs in there, put your own throw pillows, take down the valances and the pull down shades, get them out of there. They're dark and they're like, make everything look small. Take those out. Go to Walmart, grab your curtain rods, put some white curtains up, something to just make it more airy and bright. And then if you were going to go like maybe the step beyond just that, any furniture that you could replace, you don't have to replace your flooring. You can leave the flooring and just slowly, piece by piece, replace different furniture. You can paint just like you do in your house, grab with a regular brush roller and take one room at a time, one slide at a time, put some paint up, wallpaper. So yeah, there's little cosmetic things. I think sometimes we think about an RV like in this little box. Like we get really, really limited in our thinking, and it's just a house on wheels. Like you go into a house that you buy and you don't like the color of the cabinets, you don't like the color of the paint, so you change it. You just paint the room and you paint the cabinets, you put your own curtains in there, you put your own furniture. And really an RV is the same. Like, yes, you kind of have to be concerned about weight, but if you're just replacing something, and obviously paint's not adding anything, if you're just replacing furniture, you can go into an RV and make it your own. It's no different, than a house.
Yeah, that's great advice. Deep diving a little bit on that painting side, notice like through your stories that you guys spray the interiors largely. Is that something?
Yes.
When did you start doing that? Like, did you at one point roll or brush the wall? You've always sprayed. Weston just had experience from building, or?
Yes, he had experience, and it's really not too hard. I think one of the big things that we learned early on is the temperature outside, or like if that's affecting your temperature inside your RV. If you don't really want to be running your AC or your furnace while you're spraying paint, because that's going to get all sucked back in through all that overspray. But temperature, and then if the paint is running on the walls, you don't ever want to leave it. You want grab a roller, roll the runs out as soon as possible. But other than that, it's not too hard. The paint prep for spraying, since it's like everywhere you're spraying, that's probably the most time consuming, but still to me, very much worth it over rolling. But there's a lot of people who are currently living in, or they're not taking the floors out, they're not taking the furniture out, and rolling just makes way more sense for those people. I mean, for us, the whole thing's gutted. There's no flooring in. We don't have to do anything other than cover the windows, refrigerator, range. There's no countertops in. There's not a whole lot. So spraying just makes a lot of sense. But if you're currently living in and not doing a full renovation, I don't know, spraying probably be really difficult.
Is that process much the same? Like, are you guys sanding the walls and priming the walls before you spray? Or are you able to skip some of those steps with spraying?
We do not sand the walls. The only time that I'm sanding walls is if there are screw holes that need to be repaired. And then when the screw comes out, it kind of bulges weird, just like a sheetrock wall. And so I just sand it down, add some of this 3M patch and primer to the wall, and then let that dry, come back, sand it just so it's smooth. But everywhere else, that funky like wallpaper texture, we don't sand it. I just want to make sure that the wall's clean and not dusty so that the paint adheres. We use only Sherwin-Williams products, and for everything we use their Duration line, which is a high quality paint and primer. So we don't actually prime anything. We just do like usually 3 coats, I think, of paint on everything. And even the cabinetry, anything that looks like wood in those RVs, even if it's not, sometimes it's like some kind of weird sticker plastic, like we sand it. We still sand that. Anything that looks like wood, we have to sand it down. But it's tricky because it's kind of like an art, which I actually put in my Instagram highlights some visuals to show people, because if you sand too deep, like some people want to come in and sand the entire finish off, and then it's this weird particle board, and the paint will adhere, like seep in, and it will swell. So you just have to be careful that, yes, you're sanding so that the paint is going to stick and not peel, but if you go too deep, your cabinet door is going to be all warped and not fit anymore. So,
are you coming back on a second round then and spraying the cabinet bases? Are you spraying those, or do you roll those on?
Usually those get the whatever, like the white paint is that's going in, pure white, snowbound, whatever white's going in, everything gets that on it first. And then Weston comes back through and he actually rolls the accent colors on for the cabinetry. And just to keep the mess confined. Like once you spray everything white, you don't want to be overspray, the black overspray really puts a damper on things.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have aspirations of getting back. We've done some like house projects and studio projects and stuff with sprayers, but then we've had some real love-hate relationships, and so we've been rolling things, and it's so time consuming. It's not quite the finish, that we would really want. So maybe we need to revisit it again. So it's good to hear all that from you.
So what's kind of next for Marsh and Sea? Where do you see you guys going?
I'm dreaming all the time, like just thinking of tons and tons of ideas all the time of what we want to do next, and like how cool it would be to like be mobile and bring renovations. And then I was thinking about let's offer mini renos, where we will travel and like buy a Marsh and Sea trailer that you bring, and we do these mini renos in 2 weeks or something to someone's camper. I would love to have an online store. I want to keep consulting. I like being able to meet people and help them through their renovation. I really want to keep consulting. I'd love to do a course, like an e-course. I'd love to put out a video series. But
you need more time.
Yes, I need more time and my kids to go to school. So it never shuts off. My brain is just constantly going. No, but in this season that we're in right now, and what's reality for us is we're going to work towards more resale, and actually hopefully some Marsh and Sea rentals, so that you could come pick up, or we could deliver one of our renovated RVs to you and you could stay in it at whatever campsite you're going to. So we'd love to have some renovated RV rentals out there. You can have the Marsh and Sea experience, without selling your house and moving into one. So we'd really, really love that. That's the kind of goal that we are actually working towards. And then, of course, we've already started on the goal of purchase, sell, and then continuing to consult.
I'm sure people have approached you and said, hey, can you do this in my house?
Yes, we have had people ask about doing home renovations. Right now, like, I guess there's just not the margin and there's not the need for us to try to venture into that. We've always said we don't want to put all of our eggs in the RV basket, because when will it not be a trend? Like, is it going to be a trend for the next 10 years? Or is this going to die off in 2 to 3 years? I really don't know. So I think right now we're still, like, all of our plans are RV related. We're going to keep moving forward with RVs. We're open. We're flexible. Like, we've discovered through all of this that we make a great team outside of marriage. Like, we make a great team together with design and execution, dreaming what we can accomplish. And so if that turns into homes or whatever other tiny living types of things. Now I'm like, what about boats? Like, can we do this to houseboats too? Or what about all these cute little sheds that I see when I pass, like, the little like shed dealerships? I'm like, that could be a great home for someone. I need to make that into a house inside. So who knows?
Well, that's awesome. I'm sure whatever you guys do will be great. If people are wanting to reach out to you, Karlee, where would they find you?
Instagram is probably the easiest. Instagram, for the most part, I feel like I reply fairly quickly. And if not Instagram, then emailing. We have on our website, which is just marshandsea.com, I have a couple of different forms on there under our services. If you're interested in something particular, there's a generic contact form there. There's one for remote design services, and then our renovation coaching services on our website.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Karlee. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
It was a lot of fun talking with you guys. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's always so great to hear from people that are a little further down the path that you're walking on.
It's definitely helpful to get those insights into what they've done and are doing with their business, and to the direction that they might be taking them to next.
We want to thank everyone for listening and watching. These first few weeks of launching the podcast have been amazing.
We love all the feedback, the selfies of the pod being listened to in the car or in the rig, and it's just a great feeling knowing that these episodes are both being listened to and shared by so many.
So until next time, don't be afraid to give that RV a new look.